Hello, Prime Media audiences. This is your host, Ledette Muleta. I am here today joined with Leonid Savin. He is joining us from Russia. Leonid, welcome to Prime Media. Thank you so much for joining me in this early morning on Monday. I really appreciate you joining us. Please take a moment to introduce yourself to the audiences and let them know who you are.
Thank you for invitation. My name is Leonid Savin. I am from Moscow, Russia. I am chief editor of geopolitica.ru think tank, also director of the Foundation of Monitoring and Forecasting. I'm dealing with geopolitics, international relations, conflicts, and actually I was born in Ukraine, so I am familiar with situations there deeply. And so we're ready to discuss this very hot topic about what happens there in Ukraine.
Great. Thank you, Leonid. So yeah, let's get straight to what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. So a lot has been going on. It's been over 30 days since the Russia-Ukraine has started. The Russian forces have been in Ukraine. What are the steps that Russia is taking to reduce the civilian casualties? How is that being dealt with? I know that there's been reports of civilian attacks or civilian casualties. What are the steps that Russia is taking to prevent casualties? And we also know some public infrastructures have been destroyed.
From the beginning of special operation, Russia told that civilians are not target of Russian forces. The main goal of demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. But the problem is that some neo-Nazi paramilitary groups that mostly works like professional army inside of Ukraine to use human shields to protect themselves. For example, in Mariupol city, in Kharkov city. So there is a real problem, and to free civilians and to organize humanitarian corridors. Russia already organized many times humanitarian corridors, and there was humanitarian assistance to some cities and some villages impacted by the fighting. But there are also problems that, for example, in Kiev the city, authorities gave arms to ex-prisoners. Also, they gave arms to civilians, just not professionals. And they started kind of friendly fire and some start of hard crimes. And on territory where is not Russian forces going on. It was under control of Ukrainian government. So problems started before Russian army come to these cities. And of course, there is a huge disinformation campaign from Ukrainian side, from Western media, that there are a lot of civilian casualties. And also problems that Ukraine not give numbers of the civilian casualties and even not give numbers on how many troops of Ukrainian forces were killed during this conflict. So we have no clear information about it. But of course, Russian army try to avoid any strikes on civilian infrastructures and doing mostly precise strikes on military hubs and military bases on the territory of Ukraine.
Thank you, Leonid. How are Russians on the ground reacting with what's happening? Russians in Russia.
Actually, we see the public support of the Russian authorities and this operation in Ukraine, and huge support of the Russian army inside Russia, of course. there is very small numbers of pro-liberals, pro-Western people, and most of them are already go out from Russia to different countries, to European countries, to, for example, Emirates, Turkey, and so on. But if you see, for example, polls inside of Russia, we see that support of President Putin rise above the 80%. It's a very big support. And I think that it will be much grower because it's not only a special operation, it's a kind of feeling that we are back to our national sovereignty. We are not following the West anymore. We are following our path of the development, and we are following our national idea, and we would like to do what we like, and we will try to build more justice, multipolar world orders with China, with India, with Brazil, with other countries from Asia, Africa, Latin America. So our people see it like we are become more free, not only because of conflict on Ukraine, but because we see who the West is exactly, and they see that like doing like enemy of the Russia. So we see the rise of support from the public inside Russia.
Okay. So, do you believe that this operation is also bringing a lot of support to the administration because they're asserting their sovereignty, or is it because they're feeling like is there going to be any economical gains because of this? Why would the people support this?
Many layers of the conflict from the point of view of diplomacy and geopolitics of, for example, the West imposed so many sanctions against Russia like never before and like never against any other countries, like not against North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, etc. It's about 6,000 sanctions, personal and against some organization, against Russia.
How
And
many
we see
sanctions?
it, yes, different type of sanctions, and we see it like economical war against Russia, and we back to start our industry sector, our agriculture sector, our information sector, IT technologies. We back to our national product. Before we was like users of most Western products, Western services, etc. And now they block us, and so we try to organize our industrial culture, like during the time of Soviet Union, for example. And I think it's good.
So basically, you're saying it's making you more self-sufficient.
Yes, yes. We are going back to autarky, and also we are ready to cooperate with friendly countries. We are have good contracts with China, with India, for example, with Iran, with different African and Latin American countries. So it's not problem of international cooperation. It's a problem that West will isolate itself. It will not isolate Russia. The West will isolate itself. And we see, for example, on example of natural gas contracts, because the West still need our natural gas and oil supplies, and we tell, okay, but you need to pay in Russian rubles, not in euro, not in dollars. And the West will pay because they need it.
Okay. Talking about international cooperation, what are some of the threats that countries are facing for doing business with Russia? Are they able to withstand the threats that they are getting from the West?
First of all, Russia was prepared for such kind of sanctions. So it was predictable that the West will impose sanctions. And if we will see some comments of experts from different countries of European Union, we will see that they tell that sanctions not bring the ultimate goal of the West. It not works exactly. It not works for Venezuela. It not works for Nicaragua, for example, and it will not work for Russia. And so we will start more actively cooperation with other countries, non-Western countries. And I think it's good for the future of Russia and good for the future of international relation itself. Because for the last 100 years, international relations was built on Western paradigm. So we now see that moment is very good to rebuild international relation itself, to bring more justice to new world order.
Okay. Is the international community helping or fueling this conflict? Like, could things have ended sooner, or could things have been better if the international community have done otherwise? That the Ukraine situation would have not gone this far.
There is different point of view from different countries and regions. Of course, under international community for last at least 3 decades, we see that it is only the Western bloc of North Atlantic Treaty Organization, European Union, United States, Canada, also Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. It's mostly was presented like international community. But in reality, international community is much larger. It's such Asian giants like India, China, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines, for example. It's African countries, it's Latin American countries. It's a real international community. And we see that, for example, China and India and Iran, they not supported Western sanctions against Russia. And of course, there is a different point of view, and China actively promote Russian point of view on such a conflict. And they're not following the Western agenda. And we see in many countries and in different regions the same. And for example, from the collective West, we see that they bring more fuel to this conflict. They're still providing weapon supplies to Ukraine, and they still use black propaganda against Russia. And they looking for more sanctions against Russia. But in the East, in the South, in the global South, they not support the West itself.
How is the information war going? What have we learned during this conflict about the mainstream media? I mean, we've learned a lot during the past year, at least for Ethiopians, about mainstream media. There was a lot of voice censoring and, blocking or removing accounts and so forth. The Russia situation, might have actually intensified this. What are your thoughts on the mainstream media and the information war?
There is few levels of this problem. First of all, Western media was kind of global media. Reuters, Associated Press, etc. They have hubs, nets, and provide information very quickly to proxies in different countries. So the most of the world see on black and white picture. And of course, it's mostly kind of anti-Russian propaganda. A lot of fake news about what happens in Ukraine. And in European countries, Russian media was blocked before. For example, RT and Russian YouTube channels was deleted. And of course, there's problem with social nets, like because Facebook, they use also kind of anti-Russian propaganda. And for in March, there was decision in Russia to block Facebook. It's so not open works in Russia anymore. And unfortunately, also Facebook started open anti-Russian hate speech propaganda. It's a real fact. And they, after 1 week of such active hate speech, they stopped the decision because it's real very shocking news even in the Western countries, in the United States, in UK. For example, my contacts told that it's something very, very strange and weird happened in the West. So I think it's like a symbol that Western society is really very sick, and it's kind of social illness inside of society of the Western countries. Of course, there is political pressure in European countries, in the United States, and still Russia cannot to break this information blockade, but for all people who would like real news and what happens, I recommend just to visit official website of Russian Defense Ministry, for example, on the website of Russian president, and to see what happens in Ukraine.
So how is Russia counteracting this? Because it's a huge loss to, to remove, a platform like Facebook from Russia, and to also make their voice heard, the Russian people's voice, the Russian administration's voice, to be heard, worldwide. What are some of the steps being taken to replace the mainstream media?
They still honest journalists in the West, and Russia invited them to organize visit to the front line. And personally, I know and met with many journalists from European countries, even from United States, who visited. And of course, they use our personal blogs and YouTube channel just to share information about what happens there. And I think it will be difficult for Russia to start such media campaigns like West doing against Russia, because we think our Russian thinking is doing on another principles. We are not bring media blackmail, propaganda, etc., like Western media doing. It's they educated and they experienced very well. First on our societies and from times of Great Depression in United States, for example. Then they used propaganda against Soviet Union, and then they use propaganda against Russia, against Syria, against Cuba, etc., against different countries. So they well experienced how to organize this such kind of information psychological war activities through the media. Russian media not work in such way. We just bring real fact checks, and propose to our readers workshops and just to see what happens in reality.
Great. Well, Leonard, we're running out of time, but just for our audiences, where do you see the current situation going? This is just the last discussion point. Do you see the Ukrainian situation coming to an end soon? Do you? What are your predictions?
I think it will be not finished soon, but it will be finished anyway, because process of denazification, for example, is not short. It needs a lot of months and maybe years, because for last 8 years at least there was huge Nazi and anti-Russian propaganda inside of Ukraine, in schools and universities and in whole society itself. If talk about military operation, I think it needs some more weeks. But we see the about 80% of military infrastructure of Ukraine already destroyed. So it will be more easy. Still, the problem is some neo-Nazi paramilitary groups in southeast part of Ukraine, because they're highly ideologically motivated to fight against Russia, and because they have some ideas of supremacy of Ukrainian nation, and because of support of the Western countries. But operation will be finished anyway, and Russia will win. There is no way back.
Okay, Leonard, thank you so much for joining me here at PrimeMedia. I really appreciate you. Hope you can always, the invitation is always open for you to come and make your voice heard here at PrimeMedia in Ethiopia. Thank you so much for joining me, and hope to keep in touch.
You are welcome. I was very glad to bring my ideas and to talk to audience of Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Media audiences, this is your host, Lidet. This was my half an hour with Leonid Savin. I will be back with another guest. Thank you.